such. Now, I said there is annual financial statement, which is a statement of revenue and expenditure. Now that is divided into many parts. Actually they are intermingled, but to an extent I will try to do that. One part is called a revenue account. So another part is called a capital account. Both these will flow from consolidated fund of India. If it is union government, if it is a state government, it is consolidated fund of the state. So I think Mr. Ansari would have taught you about certain aspects of the constitution relating to consolidated fund, that it is actually owned by the President of India and you cannot take a pie from this account without the approval of the Parliament. That is why we have an appropriation bill. Similarly, you cannot put any money into it without passing your money bill. So that is why we have a finance bill to collect taxes. So that is fine. Now this revenue account is divided into revenue and expenditure. Similarly here you will have revenue and expenditure. All the tax revenue that I collect will be revenue account revenue. Any tax, income tax, excise duty, customs duty, gift tax, wealth tax, any form of tax, service tax, all that the government collects is called a revenue under the revenue account. Second is called non-tax revenue. For example, fees that it collects, fines and penalties, or surplus from public sector enterprises. So all these things are called as non-tax revenue. Then any grants that it receives will also be a revenue account revenue. Now I can put all this under one caption. They are all own money of the government. If you look at the way that it has been collected, they need not be given back. One character of all these different types of revenues. Another character is, it is recurring. Just like my salary, I get salary every month, or I get profit from my business every year. So too, the government would get tax revenue every year, every month, or non-tax revenues or grants. So what is one aspect of these revenues? They are own revenues of the government and they are recurring in nature. Okay. Now on this side, all salaries, pensions, subsidies, interest payments, grants, all these things are called as revenue account expenses. Look at this. They have one or two characters. Salaries, pensions, subsidies or interest payments and grants, they are also recurring in nature. Just like I spend money on food or clothing or transport in my personal life, which are recurring, so too the government, for providing various services, will have to do these expenses, and they are recurring in nature. One, two, they don't create any asset to the government. That is a very important aspect. By taking food, whether it creates an asset for me, No. Similarly, by paying me salary, for example, government pays me salary, it doesn't create any asset. Or it pays pension to the employees, it doesn't, or it gives subsidies, the food subsidies that you receive, or the interest that it has paid on the loan that it raised, or grants it has given to other governments or individuals or other countries. So all these things are also recurring, and one another aspect is they are not asset creating. So this is recurring own monies of government. What is this? Recurring non-asset creating. I will compare this with my family income and expenses. I receive income every month, that is my recurring money. I need not give it back. And I have certain expenses in my family, my rent, the money I spend on provisions, or money I spend on my servant, money that I spend on dress, on education of my children, so on and so forth, recreation. All these things are also recurring, they are not creating any asset. So if my economy is good, I will be able to meet my recurring non-asset creating expenses from my own recurring own money. If I start borrowing for my food, suppose he happened to be my friend, I ask him, இன்னைக்கு என்கிட்ட சாப்பாடு காசே இல்லை, ஒரு 50 ரூபா கொடுனாக்கா ஒரு நாள் கொடுப்பான், 2 நாள் கொடுப்பான், 3ஆவது நாள் என்ன கேட்பான், நீ எப்படிடா அதை திருப்பி கொடுப்பேன்னு கேட்பான். So if I start borrowing for my recurring expenses, to that extent it shows my economy is not in a good shape. I am not able to meet my recurring expenses from my own recurring income. So ideally this revenue account should be balanced, or better if there is a surplus. So what is revenue account balance? It is revenue account revenue minus revenue expenses. If this is negative, it means revenue deficit. So if any country budget has got a revenue deficit, it means that it borrows to spend on items that are not going to create any asset. To that extent, it will not be able to repay that in future. This is a signal. If I start borrowing for my food, it signals that I will not be able to repay, or my chances of repaying that is difficult, very low. So that is why the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act says revenue account deficit should be 0, or it should be positive. If it is positive, it means, sorry, I have written it as, if it is positive, it means revenue surplus. It is good if it has a revenue surplus. If I start saving some money, at a future date I may build a home for myself. So I need to have a surplus. It is my personal economy, but to an extent it is also true for a government. So this is how the revenue account is conceived. Any doubt? It is here. That is, yeah, even that. So anything that the government receives in terms of surpluses and profits, even RBI makes profit. and that will come here. We call that as seigniorage revenue. If RBI makes a profit, it is called a seigniorage revenue, because RBI, that will take a very long time to tell you, it has got a power to print money. It actually doesn't do any other economic activity. Just by printing money, it is able to make profit. I will have to tell you how it is able to print money, what is the source of creating money. That's a very long story. So this is one part of the budget.